Welcome to a Pagan Perspective on Israel. In this video, I would like to address something that nobody else is talking about. This is the fact that Jews and Arabs were alive when the transition to monotheism took place. People think the Torah, Bible, and Quran just wrote themselves and they magically popped up out of thin air. However, this was not the case, and that should be obvious. They were written by people. By humans. The average person does not know this, but Allah was a pagan god before he became the god of Islam. Academics think that he was a high god and potentially a creator god. It is unclear what his original archetype was, but people in Arabia venerated him for centuries. One day, Muhammad came along and decided that he wanted a monotheistic religion. He wanted Allah to become the God of his new religion, and he wanted him to become all-powerful. Of course, the pagans were not putting up with any of this. The people that venerated Allah in Arabia put up some fierce resistance against Muhammad's new version of Allah. They strongly opposed this new version, and many of them got deleted in the process. Muhammad's new version of Allah would end up winning out, and the people in Arabia would be forced to worship this new deity. I consider it to be a new deity because it is debatable whether this new version of Allah could be considered the real Allah. What most people do not realize is that the Jews went through a similar process. Hashem, or Yahweh, was also a pagan god before he became the god of the Torah and the Bible. However, this process was slightly different than the process that the Arabians went through. Yahweh's transition into an all-powerful, monotheistic God happened gradually over time. But there were Jewish people that opposed this new version of Yahweh. They ultimately lost this fight, but they still put up a fight. It was just not a violent one. I made this video to point out the fact that the Quran and Torah are objectively false, and the fact that Yahweh and Allah were originally pagan. There were Jews and Arabs alive when the transition took place, and they knew these were false. And to make matters worse, this was a top-down approach and not a bottom-up one. This means that there were still people in the countryside that were venerating the pagan version of these gods when the monotheistic versions were created by the elites. So one could claim that the pagan version of Allah and Yahweh were real, but it's difficult to claim that the new monotheistic versions were real. I do not think this gets talked about enough, despite how many people have been deleted in the name of these two monotheistic gods. I do not care if people worship the monotheistic versions of these gods or not, but there's a reason why the end times have been failing every day for the past 2,000 years. Thanks for listening. Have a fantastic day or night.